RXM Sports. Change the game.
Oh man, good to see you. We've shaken hands about 3 times on camera, so it's good to see you again. Mate, I've been given strict instruction not to ask the same questions over and over again that you usually get asked in certain interviews, but at the behest of ignoring that, just for a second, how are you feeling and how's your preparation coming into June the 8th?
Feeling good, man. Prep's been good. Another tough couple of weeks under the belt, so excited, bro. Just ready to get this done and move forward.
Absolutely. I mean, we're excited for you, and I think that you call the Gold Coast your second home. We would love to claim you from the Gold Coast, but obviously you're from New South Wales, grew up on the Central Coast, been boxing since you were 8 years old. What a journey it's been as a homegrown Australian and Samoan talent to finally make it to this level. Still undefeated. You're taking on Claudio on June the 8th. What are you expecting from him, without giving away too much of the game plan, but what have you seen from him that I guess impresses you and that you are preparing for?
Man, he's tough, he's strong, and he's got nothing to lose and everything to gain. You know, these are dangerous fights, so we've got to prepare for war. You know, we've prepared for the best version of this guy. You know, I've prepared for a version I haven't even seen of him yet, you know what I mean? So anything he brings, man, we got to have an answer to. So, you know, I'm fit, I'm strong. I feel like I've ticked every box and we're ready to go 12 hard rounds.
It will be 12 rounds, and I think that from what we're all expecting, I don't think it'll go the distance. And I want to talk about your last fight, especially with David Nika. There was a lot of intensity leading up into that fight. I actually had the privilege of following the build-up from the various press conferences to the weigh-ins right up until you guys faced off in the ring. This intensity that you bring, not just on fight night, but before the fight and in the lead-up, where does that come from?
You know, it's just the sort of flick that switches, you know, when we're in fight camp. You know, this isn't fight camp and the fight game, it's different to other sports, you know. We don't get to compete on weekends, and then if we lose, we get to come back next week. You know, we lose, we're gone. You know what I mean? If I lose, man, I lose my world title, I go back a few years and I got to start from scratch and build it back up, you know what I mean? So I take every fight like it's do or die, you know what I mean? This is a must-win mentality. So, you know, if I'm to lose, man, it's just going to set me back. So, you know, I've got goals in my head, boxes I want to tick, and in my mind, these guys are trying to take that away from me, so it is serious to me.
You've mentioned that, and I've heard you say that in the past. If you don't do your job, you're out, someone else is in. That hasn't happened yet, and I'm sure that will remain the same when you fight Claudio on June the 8th. But going back to what you were saying about that intensity that you bring to the fight, what I observed when you fought David, the press conferences, the weigh-in, all that intensity built up until you guys finally faced off in the ring. Usually after a couple of rounds, that anger, or I guess that venom, it kind of dies off and you go back to process. You see that with other rivalries of, you know, whether it's mixed martial arts or boxing, it kind of dies off and you go back to the game plan. Did it die off for you, or did you keep that same intensity, that same sort of anger, if you must call it that, throughout all 4 rounds until the finish? Because it did seem a little bit more personal than other fights that I've seen you compete in.
It wasn't so much personal, you know what I mean? Like I don't really take it as that personal, you know. I always say your enemies, your opponent's never your enemy, you know what I mean? We're there for the sport. I respect the sport, and I know why I'm there, you know what I mean? But with that, the way the fight started, as soon as it started and after that first round, you know, I sort of had that thought in my head, like, this should be one of those fights, you know what I mean? Like, if we just go at it, no one takes a backward step. It was sort of one of those exciting rivalry fights that, you know, that type of Hearns-Hagler type of fight, you know what I mean? That old school thing. So after the first round, man, I just went back to the corner. I was like, fuck, this guy wants to full bang, bro. I was like, and my old man was like, fuck, if he wants to bang, let's bang. And we were just so excited for something like that, you know what I mean? So, but in saying that, man, it's a smart approach as well. Like, I know, you know, him being the taller dude and him being the there's a time and a place for all that stuff. You know what I mean? Like, man, we're born around the sport. We know when to pick our battles. You know what I mean? We know who to brawl with, who to box with. You know, when you got to work on the inside, we adapt to certain styles. So we knew with Naika, man, he can't outbang me in the inside and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So we knew we were able to take those risks, and I knew I was going to find an opening if he wanted to stay there and bang. So, but in saying that, I do think I could have outboxed him a lot smarter. But, you know, it is what it is. It made a great fight, and, you know, I'm happy to be a part of it. You know, he earned more respect for me after that fight, you know, so.
Yeah, I think when you saw you guys backstage, there was a lot of respect there. And I think, was it at the end of the second round, did he catch you behind the ear? And I think you made mention in one of your interviews, you said, "You cheeky little, you know what?" And because he certainly had the physical attributes, didn't he, to I guess put forth a valiant challenge. But when I look at that fight with him, and I remember watching it just around the corner at the Sporting Globe and Surface, I remember having that same, I guess, emotion towards it. This is, I guess, Australia and New Zealand's Hearns Hagler. This is our Tyson Lewis. It had that big fight feel, and especially going into that, especially that last round when you finished him, possibly the most violent finish I think myself and many fans who are watching have ever seen. So congratulations once again on that one. Wanted to go back to, obviously I think you touched on it then, being Samoan. My family's from New Zealand and the Cook Islands. This sport, it's almost in our blood. In fact, it is in our blood. We come from a warrior race. Do you continue to draw from that in preparation for your fights?
Definitely, man. You know, even going back to Samoa, you know, it's the treatment that you get, the respect that I get from the kids, and the stuff that, the way they sort of treat me, man. It's a massive, you know, like, they believe in me. You know what I mean? It's a reward in a way. So of course that fuels me every day, and you know, you got people relying on me and stuff like that. So, you know, I'm close with my Samoan heritage, but, you know, I'm born and raised here in Australia. So it's like on the fence type of thing, you know. To the Samoans, I'm an Aussie, and to the Aussies, I'm a Samoan type of thing. So it's something that I'm balancing myself, and, you know, I'm trying to get in touch with the roots, like I'm sure all of us, you know, Australian Polynesians are. You know, they feel that sort of distance. But, man, it's all just about leveling up and you know, moving in the right direction, I guess.
Yeah, and I like what you mentioned there when you talk about the kids. You know, we had our sporting heroes that we looked up to when we were, well, obviously you're still competing, but whether it's rugby or boxing, obviously David Tua was a big inspiration to a lot of the Samoans out there that wanted to compete in combat sports. You got guys like Mark Hunt, Ray Seffor, so on and so forth. Do you feel that you were quickly stepping into that role of becoming someone that these kids want to go, I want to be like that guy? And if so, do you feel any added pressure from that?
Yeah, I it's not the, bro, I live in pressure, you know what I mean? Pressure's been around me my whole life, you know what I mean? I've always felt the pressure as a kid to, you know, a young teenager, to a young man, to now, you know what I mean? I've always had that pressure on me to do better, to keep winning, to level up. You know, I've been boxing my whole life, but I do feel that the kids sort of look at me, you know, like a bit different now. Like I've been going over to Samoa way before I won the world title. You know what I mean? And at that time we were knocking on doors like, you know, we need help. We need to do this, and, you know, they'd make us wait in waiting rooms, and, you know, we'll be sitting there for 45 to an hour, you know, back over there, man, they work slow. Yeah. So, but now, man, we rock up, we get red carpet type of shit, you know what I mean? So it's changed in a way, and when we say we're going to be somewhere, man, the kids are there, you know, there's parents there. It's definitely changed, you know. We have a impact in the things that we do over in that country, and it's rewarding, you know. The hard work is paying off, but, you know, we still can't get comfortable, and we still got a long way to go.
I think that mentality of never being too comfortable with where we're at the moment, I think that obviously contributes a lot to your success, and I'm sure it'll continue to do so. I can see when you speak about Samoa, it comes from here, because there's certainly a connection there when you talk about your friends or your family. Wanted to talk about the influence of your father. He's your boxing coach, is that correct? How much of an impact has he played in your progression throughout your career?
Man, huge. Man, we come from nothing together. It's been a long journey, but there's a lot of people that have made sacrifices for this journey. My father, my mum, my sisters. It's been a long journey to get here, bro. Not many people know what we've had to endure and go through. So, yeah, it's important. So now that we're here, we're able to give back as well. So I got that we all eat mentality. So.
Did you see the Chris Eubank Jr. Nigel Benn fight?
Yeah, I did.
Did you? There was speculation as to whether Senior was going to rock up to the fight. Did you see when he arrived?
Yeah.
Do we see?
He's a character, bro. Even the way he did rock up was
it's almost like a WWE entrance,
yeah.
eh?
Yeah.
Is there a chance that we see your dad coming in the big limousine and
no, bro.
we'll walk in together?
Hey, Taps, don't do that. Nah, he's all good, bro. It's good. It's good for the sport, man. That whole build-up was.
Oh, it was awesome. Well, when you talk about that fight, I think, those guys went to war for 12 rounds, and I remember listening to Eubank Jr. after that. He said that this ain't a boxing match. This is a fight. You've said the same thing. Sparring is sparring. A fight is a fight. You said it to David. If you want to have a gunfight, well, let's have a gunfight. You're no stranger to that. When you combine that with the skills that you learn in the gym, has there ever been a time in your career, and we spoke about the fight with David, but has there ever been a time in your career where you've had to go, you know what, I'm just going to put it all aside here. I'm going to keep myself defensively sound, but at the end of the day, I'm just going to have to go in there and look for a finish in the same fashion that we saw in that Eubank Benn fight. Has there ever been a time in your career like that?
What do you mean? Like, have I come up against an opponent that's
pushed you to that limit?
Yeah, sure. Like, I don't know. I feel like the key to the whole thing is pushing yourself in the limit in the gym. You know what I mean? So when you've reached that limit into the ring, and when it comes to thing, you feel like, fuck, I've been here before. You know what I mean? So we're constantly trying to push ourselves into that uncomfortable situation in the gym first. So when the time comes in the ring where they're like, what do I do? You're too tired. This guy's fast. Then you adapt, because you've already, you've been in that uncomfortable situation in the gym many times. So it's just another day in the office type of thing.
And I think the reason I ask that is because boxing often reflects the challenges that we face in life. And, for yourself, you've been through your own challenges, and for those listening, we may be facing certain challenges. And I think from the self-belief that you demonstrate, I think that's inspirational. And I think that we can all certainly draw from that. We've spoken about the impact of your father in your career. You now are a father. You've got a beautiful daughter, Lala. You've got a fantastic partner who has continued to support you, as you mentioned, right from the beginning. Do you ever think about them when you're walking to the ring?
Definitely. You think about them every day when you're training. It's like any father. Family's always been my drive. Family's always made me push that extra mile. Push through that pain, make those extra sacrifices. Like I've said, we've all made sacrifices to be here. I haven't got here by myself. So for me to not acknowledge that and use that in a positive way was, to me, that's selfish. You know what I mean? Like, they've made these sacrifices for nothing if I don't capitalize on this and do this for the right reasons, and it's still a challenge every day. I still got that little fucking thing in me that just wants to do something naughty, or but it's the thing that you fight. You're here for a purpose. We're in the midst of the career, so pump up or fuck off. You know?
Should put that on a t-shirt. I like that. And I think that the sincerity that you have, not just from here, but for your family, and the passion that you have for your career, it certainly is inspirational. Don't want to look too far ahead in the future. Obviously, we've almost seen a shift in the landscape of boxing. Obviously, this next fight on June the 8th will be under Tasman fighters with Mick Francis, but we've obviously seen, obviously the Saudis have got involved, and there's great opportunity for guys like yourself and others from this part of the world to make some serious money. At the end of the day, I can almost understand that it's not all about the money, but it's partly about the money. How much of a change or an impact have you seen in the landscape of boxing since I guess the Saudis got involved, specifically in terms of Riyadh season and things like that?
Yeah, I think the Riyadh seasons are like the best thing that happened to boxing. You know what I mean? It's just money talks. You know, like even just promoters and stuff working together. Like I feel like sometimes the outside of boxing, you know, just turns into a circus when the business gets involved. Yes. You know, like promoters not working together. Yeah, even here in Australia, you know, you got promoters that just can't come to agreement, so certain fights don't happen. You know, like we should be having massive fights here in Australia. You know, like we should have all the Australians. You know how the UFC have Australian verse. You know what I mean? And they have it here in Australia, and I feel like for that to be a part of boxing, it would just be huge for our sport. You know, it would be record-breaking numbers, but unfortunately, you know, the people outside of the ring and that can't come to agreements, they sort of hold that back. You know, they hold fighters reaching their full potential, but when we come to Riyadh season, man, the money's just and the promoters do what they have to do because they can't sort of deny it. You know what I mean? It's just the world stage. So it's boxing's in a very, very healthy situation at the moment, I feel.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that, and I think if someone in your position, you know, as a world champion or someone coming up, it's certainly something to look at and say, I can be there, but I can also get rewarded for my efforts, instead of, you know, fighting for an Australian title in some pub and getting you know, $1,000 and a couple of quarter pounders from McDonald's or something.
It's all stepping stones, but you know, you have to go through that to get, you know, like, man, I was 22-0 before I even got my first paycheck in my pocket. You know what I mean? Like, people don't understand the sacrifice that you have to do. You know, like a lot of boxers now, when they see these Riyadh seasons, the Riyadh seasons went around when I was coming through. You know, I was fighting in fucking RSLs and, you know, little function rooms and stuff like that for New South Wales, Australian titles. I had my Australian title at freaking in Newcastle at a RSL. You know what I mean? Like, it was small. It wasn't even on TV. You know, like I was making debuts and stuff on like I was fighting on Paul Gallen undercards and stuff like that. Like, they were the big cards. Yeah. There was no world champions and stuff me coming through. So we've changed the sport, and the Australian boxing is in a great position. You know, so there's a great platform, but it can always get better. But it is getting, you know, it has leveled up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've seen that over time. Like you were saying, you have to pay your dues on those smaller stages, but when you get here like you have, and like many others have, you know, well, we're here now.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, mate, look, listen, thank you very much for your time. It's an honour and a privilege. Before we let you go, June the 8th, any last predictions?
June the 8th, man, we are going to war. You know, this number one Italian cruiserweight. Like I said, bro, he's got nothing to lose, everything to gain, so I'm expecting a hard fight. Let's get in the trenches.
Let's do it, and we're right there with you. Thank you, Jai.
Cheers.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.